Fantasy Foresight. Fantasy Foresight. Fantasy Foresight. Welcome everyone to Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We're your hosts and co-founders of FantasyForesight.com, coming to you from the Rambo Fixture Company studios. I'm Ben.
And I'm Jay.
You ready to get rolling, Jay?
You know it. Let's do this.
All right, let's go. Welcome in, everyone. It is Thursday, December 19th, and we have finally made it. Week 16, the championship week 2019. The name of the game this week is buys and sells versus their aggregate projections, so we can give you as accurate expectations as possible heading into this all-important week, and we are ready to roll. How you doing tonight, Jay?
Ben, you said it. I am jacked up and ready to go. Our final buys and sells of the 2019 campaign. It's championship week. It's all on the line. Everything comes down to week 16. Let's go, my friend. We have got a list with some monster names on it of guys that we think are going to meet or exceed expectations, and even bigger names for guys that we think are going to fall short this championship week. So stay tuned. Steve is not going to be joining us tonight. Why? Because we're from Fantasy Foresight. We have foresight here on this team, and Steve's championship prep has been posted for 2 weeks to get you prepared for this week. So if you find yourself scrambling to fill some holes on your roster this week, go out to fantasyforesight.com under the Foresight Encyclopedia tab and check out Steve's big key ads. All right, Ben. You ready to dive in, brother?
Absolutely. First up, we have a quarterback on our buys list that is going to surprise you. LA Chargers quarterback Philip Rivers. He is the aggregate projected QB 12 heading into week 16, which surprised me in and of itself. And then Total Foresight likes him as QB 10. That is in part because the Chargers are at home versus the Oakland Raiders, and they clock in with the 8th best Foresight strength of schedule at the quarterback position. Chargers are a 7-point favorite at home. Over-unders 45.5. And Rivers has had an underwhelming season, but is still QB 15 on the season in average fantasy points per game. Just kind of like who he usually is year in and year out. So this week at home versus that Raiders defense, yes, you can count on him to deliver in a championship week, a back-end QB1 performance.
And that's what it's all about, Ben, the matchup. Philip Rivers has been QB 22 in average points per game over the last 4 weeks, but both his aggregate projection and Total Foresight like him as a back-end QB1. That should tell you everything you need to know. All right, next up on our list, LA Rams running back Todd Gurley. I told you we had big names. Todd Gurley is a buy this week. His aggregate projection is RB16. In Total Foresight, we have him ranked as RB5 overall, going against San Francisco on Saturday night. Big matchup. We have him as the 9th worst Foresight strength of schedule at the running back position this week. He has been RB 15 in points per game over the last 4 weeks. A few weeks ago, we outlined how much surprising success the Niners have allowed to opposing running backs in fantasy over the last couple months. And all of a sudden, the Rams have recommitted to Todd Gurley. You can safely structure your roster this week viewing Todd Gurley as an RB1 in week 16. Book it.
Yes, sir. And you got to wonder if this was the plan in LA with Todd Gurley all along. Some baffling head-scratching lack of usage early on may lead to him reassuming that workhorse role by design from here on out. And it'll be interesting to watch both this week in your fantasy championship and as the Rams make a push for the playoffs in real football. Next up, we have another big name running back on this list, reappearing after a couple of previous appearances. Baltimore Ravens running back Mark Ingram, one of the most entertaining guys in football this season. He is aggregate projected RB13 this week. Total Foresight likes him as RB4. 4. The Baltimore Ravens are on the road at the flailing Cleveland Browns, and they clock in, the Ravens do, with the best foresight strength of schedule at the running back position. Game flow and game script, according to Vegas, should be on his side. The Ravens are a 10-point favorite, and the over-under is 49.5. Over the last 4 weeks, Mark Ingram has been better than that aggregate projection as RB12. He has made our buys list several times this season, and sometimes we've been right, sometimes we've been wrong, but our analytics would not let us pass on Mr. Ingram this week, and trust me, versus the Browns, he won't have a hard time.
Yes, the formula is simple. The Ravens love to run the ball, and they are successful at it. The Browns, as of late, have given up rushing yards. If the Ravens are smart, they won't rely on putting Lamar out there and subjecting him to a possible injury when they have a deep playoff run in front of them, and they should be relying on their actual ball carriers to get the job done, and there's no reason to believe they won't in their matchup this weekend. All right, next up on our list, speaking of injuries, a guy coming off of injury, Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Adam Thielen. His aggregate projection this week is WR21. We have him ranked as WR14. Sneaky play as the Vikings host Green Bay on Monday Night Football. The Vikings receivers this week have the 15th best foresight strength of schedule for wide receivers. And listen, he's coming off of injury. He hasn't performed consistently over the last 4 weeks because he hasn't been available. So it's championship week. Start-sit decisions are at their most stressful. Based on availability, many may not view Thielen as a rock-solid WR2 this week, but we are here to tell you that he is. He played 51% of the snaps last week in his first week back from injury, and we expect a sneaky performance from him in championship week. Fire him up with confidence.
Absolutely. This seems like one of those guys that everybody has forgotten about. And, rightfully so. Early on, there were problems with the passing game. Then he's missed some time with injuries. Last week, he came back and it was a pretty quiet performance. But when I saw that snap rate, it told me that he is okay. And I expect to see it go up even more this week. And he is probably going to be able to best that WR21 aggregate projection. So moving on to a favorite on this podcast all season long, Atlanta Falcons tight end Austin Hooper rounds out our buys in championship week. He is aggregate projected tight end 7. Total Foresight likes him as tight end 4. The Falcons are home versus the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday, and the Falcons have the second best Foresight strength of schedule at the tight end position. Vegas likes the Falcons as a 7-point favorite. High over under at 46.5. Hooper was a bad replay review away from catching a TD last week in his first game back from injury. Now that he's fully healthy for the second straight week, you can expect the Hooper of old from earlier in 2019 when it's all on the line.
Come on, Hoop. Let's go get it. Let's rebound and bring home some championships. All right, Ben, that is our final buy list of the week. We have been on fire on sells over the last 8 weeks. Our picks are 33-7. So we have our final 5 for you, everybody, today. We're going to save the biggest name for last. So we're going to kick this off with Jacksonville Jaguars running back Leonard Fournette, somebody who has made our list as of late and has proved us correct as of late. His aggregate projection this week is RB3 overall, and that's why we are fading him. We have him projected as RB9, still an RB1, but just back end and not the top end of the spectrum this week in championship week. The Jaguars are at the Falcons. They have the 6th worst foresight strength of schedule for running backs this week. Falcons are favored by 7, meaning Vegas thinks the Jags are going to be behind and playing catch up. Now, Leonard Fournette has surprised with his PPR production this season. This is another managed expectation piece of advice. Do not structure your roster counting on an elite performance from Fournette this week. RB1, sure. But elite RB1, not this week.
Absolutely, Jay. It's all about managed expectations. It's all about the most critical, most precise decision making possible this week with your start sits. So just understand he's that back end RB1 and not that high end RB1 that people are calling for. We've got another running back that is set to disappoint this week. Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon had a big week last week, been playing pretty well on an RB1 level over the last 4 weeks as RB9 overall. His aggregate projection this week, though, is a little aggressive at RB6. Total Foresight likes him this week as RB14. The Bengals are on the road at the Dolphins with the 11th best Foresight strength of schedule at the position. Vegas likes this as a totally even game, which is just eye-opening. I don't know what to expect, but I expect a lot of Fitz magic. I know that for sure. Listen, Joe has picked up his play recently, like I said. However, do not overreact. It is championship week, and it's all about precise decision-making. And our analytics are advising managed expectations, predicting more of a high-end RB2 performance versus that RB6 overall projection.
All right, Mr. Mixon, we've seen you on this list plenty of times. We're going to go out on a high note and be right about you this time as well. Next up, we have Tennessee Titans wide receiver A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, this may surprise you. His aggregate projection this week is WR8 overall. Why is that? Over the last 4 weeks in PPR points per game, he is WR2.
Yeah.
WR2 overall. Unreal. In Total Foresight, we have him ranked as WR15, so a nice solid WR2. But an elite WR1, not this week, as the Titans are home against the Saints. The Titans wide receivers have the 11th best Foresight strength of schedule metric this week. We loved A.J. Brown on this podcast since the preseason, and we have the documented audio to prove it. We love seeing this guy break out and garner the respect we knew he deserved heading into the season. However, for this week, in spite of his elite play recently, you need to manage your roster expecting high-end WR2 numbers from him and not quite the elite performances we've enjoyed from him as of late.
You said it perfectly, Jay. Next up, we have got a less exciting name this week, but an important name this week because it is the tight end position, and you might be thinking about streaming this guy. Denver Broncos tight end Noah Fant. He is aggregate projected tight end 12 this week. Total Foresight likes him as tight end 23. The Broncos are at home versus the Detroit Lions, and they have the 8th worst Foresight strength of schedule at the tight end position. Vegas likes Denver as a 7-point favorite, a low over-under at 38.5. It screams running attempts and rush yards to me. He has been, Noah Fant, tight end 18 in average points per game over the last 4 weeks, and tight end 21 in points per game on the season. Our analytics do not expect a tight end 1 performance from him in this all-important championship week.
All right. We saved our biggest name on our sells list for the final sells list of the season for last. And that is none other than Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
What?
Patty Mahomes. His aggregate projection this week is QB6. We have him ranked in Total Foresight as QB8. They are at the Bears on Sunday night. They have the 19th best or 13th worst Foresight strength of schedule rank for the quarterback, depending on how you want to look at it. Vegas has KC favored by 6. However, the over-under is a low 44 points. That's lower than the Jags and the Falcons. That's lower than the Bengals and the Dolphins in Miami. That's lower than Titans and Saints. It's a low over-under. Now, Pat Mahomes is an elite quarterback. We all know that. However, he has been QB 12 in points per game in fantasy over the last 4 weeks. And you're expecting him to put up QB 6 numbers in a tough matchup, in a tough environment. Hey, unless you have another elite option at quarterback, you're starting Mahomes. However, you must do so with managed expectations this week. His projection is twice as high as his average fantasy finish over the last 4 weeks. Be advised and proceed accordingly.
Yeah, man, it's a huge name and not one many might expect on this podcast on ourselves. But again, the managed expectations has never been more important this season than it is this week. And you've got to look at him, as surprising as it sounds, as more of a back-end QB1 than an elite QB1 this week.
All right, that wraps up our final sells of the 2019 campaign. We are excited for championship week as Team Fantasy Foresight takes on Matt Williams in the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo Charity League run by Fantasy Football Statistics. We are excited to take on Matt and hopefully bring home the crown, which will net us a nice donation for Special Olympics. And also, in the Fantasy Foresight Challenge, we will crown our champion. Listener Travis is taking on industry expert Mick of Fantrax, who you can find on Twitter at the Mick23. So good luck, fellas. We are excited to crown our inaugural champion of the Fantasy Foresight Challenge.
Absolutely, Jay. And we will be back with everyone to discuss the aftermath of a wild championship week on Monday Night Football. Hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah or whatever it is you celebrate. And we'll see you next time. Can't wait.
And that wraps up this episode of Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We thank you for joining us. Be sure to visit us, as always, at fantasyforesight.com. Use the links at the bottom of the page to find us across social media, including Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you pod. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.